Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. We begin with the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, which has rejected US President Donald Trump's Middle East peace plan. In a statement following a ministerial meeting in Jeddah, the 57-member OIC called on all the member states not to engage with this plan. It also directed the member states not to cooperate with the US administration in implementing the plan in any form. The UN Security Council is also scheduled to meet on the 10th of February to discuss the plan. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas will also attend the meeting. Meanwhile, Palestinians are holding protests across the occupied territory and other parts of the world against Israeli atrocities and Trump's plan. The death toll in China has risen to 360, more than the SARS epidemic of 2003. 3,000 new cases have been diagnosed and over 17,000 are confirmed infected in the country. Outside China, there are 150 cases known and one person has died. This report has the details.
Health workers with loudspeakers have been telling people not to leave their homes unless they absolutely have to. A scene from China's struggle to contain the new coronavirus. 8,000 doctors split into 68 medical teams are in Hubei province to contain the virus. As countries evacuate their citizens from China and test them, experts warn against ignoring no-symptom carriers.
This is not very common, but there are cases. There must be a reason for administering the virus test to these people. In most cases, they have been in close contact with infected patients, or they have been to Wuhan, or in close contact with people who have been in Wuhan.
A public health emergency has taken effect in the US, banning entry to any foreign national that recently visited China. Most people returning to their countries, however, are being kept in quarantine.
Of these repatriated people, on the basis of health, 36 had symptoms on arrival and 16 returned to their countries. There are still about 20 people who are now on French soil and will remain in quarantine for 14 days.
More countries are imposing travel restrictions to and from China, while an iPhone component manufacturer has moved production from China to India. In Wuhan itself, a 1,000-bed hospital built especially to treat the virus is ready to take its first patient after being constructed in only 8 days.
Well, China has accused the US of causing panic in its response to the deadly coronavirus outbreak. In a news briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying said Washington's actions will only spread fear instead of offering assistance. She said the US was the first country to impose a travel ban on Chinese travelers and the first to suggest a partial withdrawal of its embassy staff. Who has said, contrary to WHO's recommendations, developed countries like the US have taken the lead in imposing restrictions. The WHO has already warned that closing borders could accelerate the spread of the virus. Earlier, the US declared a public health emergency and denied entry to foreign nationals who had visited China in the past 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Thai doctors have said that they have had some success in treating the new coronavirus with a combination of flu and HIV medication. They say the treatment results in a rapid improvement in patient health within 48 hours. More in this report.
The doctors at Rajaviti Hospital in Bangkok say they've used the novel treatment with several patients in their care. The method uses a mixture of the HIV drugs, lopanavir and ritonavir, and combines them with the flu drug oseltamivir.
This is the standard treatment that we have used with patients. It is a mixture of anti-HIV drugs and flu drug oseltamivir, which China has been using and has cured Middle East respiratory syndrome. The mixture of both these treatments shows vast improvements within 48 hours after applying the treatment, and the results turns negative.
Chinese doctors have already been using these separate drugs to treat the virus. But doctors at this hospital are the first to combine all three. Thailand has recorded 19 cases of the coronavirus. 8 people have since recovered and returned home. 11 others are still receiving treatment.
Well, Pakistanis stranded in China have started arriving in Islamabad as the government resumed flight operations to the virus-hit country. Speaking alongside Chinese envoy to Pakistan, Yao Jing, in Islamabad, Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on Health, Dr. Zafar Mirza, said none of the passengers that arrived in the country were suspected of having the coronavirus. He said no citizen, whether Chinese or Pakistani, is allowed to leave China without spending a 14-day disease-free period. Chinese Ambassador Yao Jing thanked Pakistan for extending its unwavering support to the country during this difficult time. He said a large number of Pakistanis are present in China and they consider them their compatriots. Moving on to Turkey, which says it has killed over 30 Syrian soldiers in retaliation to the government shelling of its posts in Idlib province. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the army hit 40 Syrian military targets in the attack. Earlier today, Ankara said 6 of its soldiers in Idlib were killed and 9 others were wounded in shelling by the Syrian army. Erdogan said Turkey has told Russia to stand aside in the escalating conflict. He said the military operation will continue until all targets are achieved.
The operation is underway at the moment. Around 40 points are now the constant targets of our operation. According to initial indicators, there are 30 to 35 Syrians on the other side that have been neutralized. However, this is not the end. The operation continues as it was. We told our Russian counterparts especially, you are not our counterparts here. It is the regime directly.
The people of the occupied Golan Heights have staged a general strike against Israel's aggressive and expansionist policy. This comes after a meeting of religious figures and dignitaries from the Golan at the town of Majdal Shams. Protesters say Israel is setting up wind turbines on agricultural land and confiscating their property. They say they will confront the plan and Israeli soldiers on the ground. The protesters accuse Israel of having an aggressive agenda and being an expansionist power. EU's foreign policy chief Joseph Borrell and Iran's foreign minister Javad Zarif held talks over the 2015 nuclear deal. Borrell's trip follows a spike in tensions between the US and Iran following the 3rd of January assassination of a top Iranian general in a US drone strike. The nuclear deal between Tehran and a group of world powers has been crumbling since US President Donald Trump withdrew from it in 2018. Washington has since stepped up sanctions and initiated a campaign of maximum pressure against Iran. Tehran has gradually stepped back from its own commitments under the deal. In Lebanon, demonstrators gathered in front of the U.S. Embassy in North Beirut to protest against Donald Trump's peace plan. 6 people were injured when security forces used pepper spray to regulate the crowd in the vicinity. Demonstrators threw rocks at security forces while burning U.S. and Israeli flags. Security was already heightened due to the prospect of demonstrations around the embassy. The peace plan has been welcomed by Israel but widely criticized by Arab leaders in the Middle East. UN Special Envoy to Yemen Martin Griffiths is in the rebel-held capital of Sana'a to open a medical air bridge. The plan, launched by the government coalition in cooperation with World Health Organization, is scheduled to open today. Patients who cannot be treated in Yemen will be airlifted by the UN-chartered flights from Sana'a to hospitals in Jordan and Egypt. Griffiths also met Houthi leaders who said government strikes are holding back the chances of making peace. Houthis called on the UN to quickly negotiate the release of prisoners of war and detainees. Military operations in Yemen have escalated in recent weeks, stifling attempts to end the civil war. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has left for Malaysia on a 2-day official visit. The Prime Minister is visiting on the invitation of his Malaysian counterpart, Mahathir Mohamad. In a statement, the Foreign Office said the 2 Prime Ministers will sign important agreements. The Prime Minister will also address an event organized by the Institute of Strategic and International Studies in Malaysia. He will also highlight the human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. This is PM Khan's second visit to Malaysia since assuming office. A United Nations report has endorsed Pakistan's stance on being a target of cross-border terrorism from Afghanistan. The report was released by the UN Security Council Committee overseeing sanctions against Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The report said the terror groups Tehrik-e-Taliban and Jamaat-ul-Ahrar regularly conduct attacks on Pakistani border posts from Afghanistan. Pakistan has a firm stance that terrorists have been targeting the country from their bases in Afghanistan. The report is a testimony to the international recognition of the actions taken by Pakistan's security forces against terrorism. More stories to follow, but right after a short break, stay tuned with Indus News. Welcome back. In the third incident of its kind over the past 4 days in India, Hindu radicals have opened fire at demonstrators protesting against the Citizenship Act. But protest demonstrations and sit-ins against the discriminatory legislation continue across the country. Police say 2 suspects arrived on a scooter and fired shots outside the Jamia Millia University in New Delhi and fled the scene. Meanwhile, protests against the new law continue in Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata and other parts of the country. In a massive rally, 20,000 women and farmers took part in a protest in Malkotla city of Indian Punjab. The all-women sit-in in Mumbai has entered its 9th day, while the Shaheen Bagh protest is ongoing since 16th of December. The US has demanded evidence from the Taliban that they can and will reduce violence before signing a peace deal. Speaking in Uzbekistan, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said a lot remains to be settled in the ongoing negotiations with the Taliban in Doha. Pompeo said the 2 sides almost reached a deal last time, but the Taliban couldn't demonstrate their will or capacity to reduce violent attacks. On Saturday, the US envoy Zalmay Khalilzad also told Afghan President Ashraf Ghani in Kabul that no significant progress was made in talks with the Taliban. The US Secretary of State is on a tour of Central Asia to garner support for the Afghan peace process and America's Middle East peace plan. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and ASEAN Secretary General Lim Jock-hoi are set to hold talks on a strategic partnership in Moscow today. Russia's Foreign Ministry says Moscow will boost coordination at international and regional platforms. Spokesperson Maria Zakharova said the expansion of cooperation in trade, economic and humanitarian fields will be discussed. Zakharova said Moscow aims to pursue talks on joint efforts within the formation of the Greater Eurasian Partnership. The ministry said ASEAN states have directed over $4 billion of accumulated investment into the Russian economy. Ukraine says it will press for higher compensation from Iran for the families of the people killed in the plane crash in Tehran on 8th of January. The Ukrainian International Airlines Boeing 737 was hit by a missile shortly after it took off in Tehran en route to Kiev. In an interview, President Volodymyr Zelensky said Iran immediately offered $80,000 for each family. He described the sum as paltry, saying he will press for more. Zelensky said Ukraine is still waiting for Iran to return the plane's black box data recorders. Meanwhile, Iran has refused to share further evidence from the investigation with Ukraine after audio from the probe was leaked by Kiev. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson says that London wants a comprehensive free trade agreement similar to Canada's. Johnson set out his negotiating terms for trade talks with the European Union in a speech in London. The Prime Minister said the UK is not leaving the EU to undermine European standards. He said if the UK fails to succeed in getting a good deal, then trade will have to be based on existing withdrawal agreement with the EU.
We want a comprehensive free trade agreement similar to Canada's. But in the unlikely event that we do not succeed, then our trade will have to be based on our existing withdrawal agreement with the EU.
Britain officially left the EU on 31st of January after 47 years of membership. The country is now gearing up to formally enter trade negotiations during a transition period. But experts are already calling the divorce deal a lose-lose for both the EU and the UK's economies. More in this report.
The UK's economy slowed down to its weakest in over 7 years in November 2019, growing slightly over 0.5%. With the European Banking Authority headquarters moving from London to Paris, the struggling British economy is into uncharted post-Brexit waters. Economists fear the worst for the UK if it fails to negotiate favourable tariffs with the EU.
We can see from the trade structure of the UK that it relies more on the EU market, so problems of the macroeconomy of the UK will emerge sooner than those of the EU's macroeconomy.
On the other hand, with the divorce now official, the EU has lost the bloc's second largest economy.
Many people think that no one benefits from Brexit. Many experts forecast that the economic development of the UK will slow down, and that in the next few years it will go down by 2% to 4%. The EU has also lost an important member.
London has called for a Canada-style free trade agreement with the bloc and threatened to walk away if a similar deal is not agreed.
In the U.S., the Democratic Party will kick off their 2020 presidential race in Iowa today. Party supporters will pick up the candidate they want to face President Trump in November's presidential election. The favorite, Bernie Sanders, will clash with Joe Biden, while Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg expect to gain momentum. More in this report.
The race for the White House will officially be underway tonight when Iowans cast their votes in the first presidential caucus. President Trump will be the unopposed Republican nominee, but Democratic nominees will have to fight through a crowded field of rivals. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is on a roll after peaking at the right time just before the Iowa caucus.
Tomorrow night is the beginning. It is the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
The liberal left-leaning Sanders narrowly leads the polls, while centrist ex-Vice President Joe Biden is still a strong contender.
Look, folks, the fact is that we're in a situation where every 4 years, democracy starts here in the state of Iowa, and it starts here in the state of Iowa.
Victory in Iowa doesn't guarantee anyone the nomination, but it could give the winner a crucial shot in the arm.
In Burkina Faso, 20 people have been killed in a militant attack in the village in the northern province of Seno. Security officials said the heavily armed attackers were riding motorbikes. They said the assailants executed locals in the village of Bani. The attack comes less than a week after 39 people were killed in Somme province. A surge in violence in the West African country has killed hundreds and forced nearly 1 million people from their homes. Over the past 2 years, much of the north has remained ungovernable. Last night at the British Academy of Films and Television Awards, First World War film 1917 was the big winner with 7 trophies. This report has the details.
BAFTA goes to 1917.
Among others, Sir Sam Mendes' single-shot movie won Best Film, Best British Film, Best Director, and Best Cinematography.
Yes, it's a war movie that we made, but it's also a movie about home and about family. So it's moving to me to get this in my hometown for the first time.
And the BAFTA is awarded to Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Brad Pitt won Best Supporting Actor for his role in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
And the BAFTA is awarded to Renee Zellweger.
And the BAFTA goes to Joaquin Phoenix for Joker.
While Joker won 3 awards, including Best Actor for Joaquin Phoenix.
I feel very honored and privileged to be here tonight. BAFTAs have always been very supportive of my career, and I'm deeply appreciative. But I have to say that I also feel conflicted because so many of my fellow actors that are deserving don't have that same privilege.
And the BAFTA is awarded to Sam Mendes for 1917.
Sir Sam is the first British winner of Best Director at the BAFTA since Danny Boyle won for Slumdog Millionaire in 2009.
Thank you to...
China's manufacturing activity has expanded at the slowest pace in 5 months in January as the fall in new orders dragged on production. According to the business media group Caixin Market, China's Purchasing Managers Index rose to nearly 51 points, more than forecast by the economists. If the index falls below 50, it will indicate a contracting manufacturing activity in the country. On Friday, the National Bureau of Statistics said China's official PMI was 50 in January, an indication of stalled activity. NBS warned its survey doesn't reflect the impact of the new coronavirus that has further slowed down economic activity in the country. Stock markets across Europe are trading higher as investors appear to brush off concerns over the UK's departure from the EU. Investors have also shrugged off fears over the spreading coronavirus.
Frankfurt's DAX and CAC 40 are trading fractionally higher. London's FTSE 100 also gained a fraction on the first day trading after Brexit, after hitting a 7-week low in the previous session. In Asia, the Shanghai Composite crashed, closing nearly 8% lower as the coronavirus sent investors into panic selling. The Nikkei 225 closed nearly 1% lower. Hong Kong's Hang Seng gained a fraction as Chinese tech giant Tencent and Alibaba shares jumped nearly 2% each. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil price fell over 1% as global economy slowed down amid the outbreak.
Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Thanks for watching.